Welcome to the podcast. Súbele volumen. Conversation with the people who were with me. In the world TV. Carlos tonight. Historias de un reportero. Carlos tonight. Dale que viene lo bueno.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. I really appreciate it. Before we begin this episode, I want to invite you to my website, carlostonight.com. There you can find the latest information on the podcast, the upcoming guests, and check out past episodes. That's carlostonight.com. Well, Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and a lot of people are going to be spending that weekend with their special someone. Others may not. That's okay. In this episode, we're going to talk about loving yourself. And my guest this week is Tiffany O'Hearn, a soulful alignment guide and visionary connector. She empowers people to heal from trauma and live joyfully. Hey, Tiffany, how's it going? How are you?
Carlos, thanks a lot for having me. I'm doing really well today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon. As I mentioned at the top, Valentine's Day is just around the corner. A lot of people are always focused on, having that certain someone. But I think the key is you're loving yourself, being that certain someone on Valentine's Day for yourself. How do you help people begin to love themselves?
It's such a really beautiful question. And, I love how you're tying it into Valentine's Day, right? Because Valentine's Day, it seems to be one of those holidays that's more expressed outwardly. But what if we flip that? Because in order for us to truly love others, we really need to love ourselves first. And so when it comes to self-love, it's first and foremost understanding what that means for you and to you, right? So often we view ourselves as conditional, in the conditional sense of the word love. And we don't necessarily do that on purpose, right? It's just the programs that we've developed over the years, whether it be through traumas, whether it be from our parents, whether it just, be inherited almost within us. And so, it's really time for us to remember and to come home to self, to who we are, because, all of our relationships shift when we love ourselves more. In the most beautiful of ways. And so it's really that remembrance, because you weren't born not liking yourself. And that might seem a little big and bold for me to say, right? Like, oh, I like myself. And I'm sure that you do. But do you love yourself? And what do I mean by that? When you look in the mirror, do you think loving thoughts? Do you express love towards yourself? When, you're challenged by something, and let's say you make a mistake, do you view it with curiosity and as a lesson? Or is it, these words that you say to yourself that are really sort of degrading and bring you down, really from a vibrational sense as well, and then we start to find all the ways that we're not good enough or we're not worthy. And whatever we seek, we do find.
I always heard that expression, before you love anybody else, you got to love yourself. What are some of the exercises we can do at home to kind of get closer to that love for ourselves?
And that's such a great question, because first and foremost, we weren't, again, if we go back to being born, right? We weren't born not liking ourselves or having this conditional love. And it's something that was developed through the years. So that being said, if it took some time to become it, then we can take some time to unbecome that. And so it really takes consciousness. I mean, that's really going to be the key to this all. And when I mean consciousness, it means I'm going to intentionally stand in front of the mirror and find really beautiful, kind, loving things to say about myself. And I might do that once a week because it feels really hard. It's okay, right? But then maybe, after a couple of weeks, it feels easier. So now I'm going to start to integrate that a little more, because I also know humans, right? We like all or nothing. We tend to, even though it doesn't suit us, right? So 1% better. So how can you love yourself 1% more? Does that mean having a loving conversation with yourself? Does that mean, going for a really beautiful, nourishing walk or eating nourishing foods? There's lots of opportunity within our day where we can show ourselves love. Most often, we think it's things that we do outside of ourselves. And that's where we find love. And it's simply not. And it becomes a chase almost. And then it inhibits our relationship. So how do we come back home? And it's really to understand you. What is it that you love? And do those little things, you know? It's about looking at yourself and seeing that divine, human being there, right? Because people love you, your flaws and all. You need to love you, right? And it's also about accepting. Accepting is really huge. So often, how many times, Carlos, have you paid somebody a compliment and they reject it? Not intentionally. You say, oh, I really like your shirt. And they're like, oh, I got this back in 1924. So I still like it, right?
Yes.
And so how do we accept? Because as much as we want to give, we also need to know how to receive. And it's a very loving thing. If somebody offers you something and it feels aligned with you, say yes, not no.
Mm-hmm. I feel like those are all the keys to becoming a better friend, a better husband, wife, better person. And it's what you mentioned, the small things, right? A compliment, showing up for somebody, right?
And just feeling that love within you. And so, something that you can do if you're even foreign to that love that you have within, I could say that you just sit in your presence and just repeat the word love over and over again, because love is it's the highest frequency that we can emit. And so when we focus on love, we are raising our vibration. When our vibration is raised, now it's so much easier to look in the mirror and say, wow, Tiffany, you're beautiful. You're kind, you're compassionate. But when we're in a negative space, it's going to be a little bit harder or a little bit more challenging to find those loving tones within you. If you do, you'll still flip it around. And it might also call for you to find yourself in a more loving space, right? Amplify that love within so that you can radiate it out.
Awesome. So Tiffany, tell me a little bit about you and how long have you been doing this type of work?
I think formally, within the past couple of years, but I think that I've always been a conduit for love without, fully having the words for it, and then, right now I do all sorts of holistic healing. I do energy healing. I do astrology. I do, I have master classes. I have everything I do is the cornerstone of just coming back home and finding that love within. And astrology is a really beautiful way to infuse that as well, because we all have the energies within us. And sometimes it's about empowering them. So often we disempower so much of our goodness because it's scary, or others will, reject it, or we don't have that self-worth. So we're not fully embracing who we are. And that also inhibits our self-love.
That's awesome. And so what's the reaction that you get from people when you help them out, coming maybe from a low place in their life and talking to you and studied with you, and now they're beaming with glow and love?
Yeah. It's almost like the lights turn on. I think that's really the best way to describe it, and I'm not doing it, right? I'm simply providing you, a road with which to take, but it is your journey. And so it is almost as if that light just turns on within you and you remember, who you are. And the more that we can take one step and put it in front of the other, the more we light up inside. And we all know those beings. We might see them in the grocery store sometime. They come into our lives where you can't stop thinking about them because they just made you feel so good. And it's likely because they just have that love inside. And that emits such a powerful frequency outside. And it's a really beautiful thing to guide someone back home to themselves, because it does turn it's that spark within them that's already there. It's just been a little dull.
And like one of your videos, you mentioned about connections and about what you were just talking about, meeting a certain somebody in your life. We've all had that experience where somebody walks into our lives for just, I don't know, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years, and then they leave. And when that happens, I often find myself thinking, like, what was their purpose? Why did they come into my life? And what change did they make, positive or negative? What did I learn? How do you, I guess, talk a little bit about that and how people can relate or maybe focus on, learning about the certain person that they meet?
Yeah. Every one of us here is on a journey, whether we know it or not. It's happening. And so there will be people that come in and out of our lives, and we've all had them. You know, you have that, think about that one coworker that you just loved and you worked together for 2 years, and you'll still say that you're friends. You haven't seen the person in 15 years, but to you, they're still friends. Those are those types of people that float in and out of our lives. And, you know, the one thing that's constant is change. And so to your point, it is such a beautiful experience to get curious as to why they're either in your life right now or were in your life, because there's always a lesson. Us as humans, we're here to learn. And we cannot do that without experiences from other human beings. And so the same can be true. If there's somebody who you deem to be a little bit negative in your life, that's also an invitation to get a little curious. What is my lesson here? And if you can learn and embrace that lesson, even though it feels pretty difficult, you will move through it in a much easier space. Because, you know, think of any relationship. If you've been divorced, if you've ever broken up with somebody, they are here to teach you something. Now you can look at them and say, well, this is all your fault. This is them. But I promise you, you are not the victim of your life, you know, and it's easy to fall into that victimhood mentality, but they're here to show you something. What is it? Get curious, because the answers are all within. You know, you're not going to find them on Google, right? You're going to find them in that stillness and in that curiosity. It might come to you in a dream. It might come to you in a podcast where all of a sudden that light flicks on and you go, oh, I know it now. I know it now.
Mm-hmm. I've had experiences where like I'll bump into somebody. Here's a story from like probably 10 years ago. I was trying to get fit. And so I would go to the gym and I would go maybe, I don't know, 5-10 minutes on the treadmill and just call it a day and then eat whatever I wanted. And so I was like, why am I not seeing results? So I kept going to the gym and there was this kid that I kept like running into. And I'm like, what's the deal? And spiritually, I was like, you know, what's the deal with this person? And so a couple of times I kept, you know, running into him. And then my friend invited me to lunch one day and she told me to pick her up from her job. So then I went to her job. I opened the door and the first person I saw was that kid from the gym. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on, universe? Right. And so then I asked her, I'm like, what does he do? And, you know, whatever. And she said something like, oh, he always goes to the gym and is always wanting to help people. And maybe I can ask him. And so long story short, he turned out to be like a personal trainer. He invited me to work out with his group. And like Monday through Saturday, I was out there working out. And I always thought, when you mentioned that, the people that come into our lives, I was like, wow, this is a person that, you know, came into my life, did what they needed to do, and then left, you know, which is pretty cool.
Right. He was here to, you know, express what's already within you. Right. So you were kind of being the victim and going, well, I don't really understand what's happening here. Right. And he's like, no, Carlos, come on, man. Come on. It's you. Right. Right.
Let's talk about manifestation. And so you do a lot of that with your clients or the people you work with, correct? Mm-hmm. So tell us how it works. How do we do it? And then have we seen results?
Manifestation is one of those words. It's a bit of a buzzword now. You know, I really feel it's like abundance too, right? And so when it comes to manifestation, the number one way that you will not manifest is if you don't know it to be yours. And so what do I mean by that? So if you say, hey, you know, Tiff, I really, you know, I want to make $10,000 this month. And I'm like, well, that's great, Carlos. How does it feel? And you're like, meh, you will not make $10,000 this month. Right? If you say, you know, I want to make $1,000 this month. And I say, Carlos, how does that feel? And you're like, yeah, that's great. Okay. In order to manifest something, you have to know that it's yours. And if you don't know it, you cannot achieve it, because the universe will say, but you don't really want that. And oftentimes we talk ourselves out of what we want. Our ego does that. You know, our ego wants to keep us safe. So if I say, you want to make $10,000, let's get you there. And you're like, ooh. Your body starts to get tense, even though the words coming out of your mouth might feel a little different. Your body gets tense. You start to shrug. You won't manifest it. And you start telling yourself the opposite. I'm not worthy of that. Of course you can't do that. Oh, why did you think you could do that? Right. And so in order to really feel the powers of manifestation, it's to start with something that no one can take from you, that you know it without a shadow of a doubt. And it can simply be, I'm going to go get a coffee today. I know I'm going to get a coffee today. And you go and get the coffee and you go, thank you. I knew I was going to get that, right? We have to find those simple ways because, again, these are these muscles in our brain, in our body that we really need to start influencing in all the positive ways. In order to manifest, we really need to be vibrating a little bit higher, a little bit more positive. Now, the same is true. So if you say, I want to make $10,000 and that feels good in your body, and you're like, no, this is what I want, right? And so you're walking down the road and there's a penny on the ground and you go, oh, no. I need something bigger. And you don't pick up that penny and you don't find gratitude in the fact that you're looking for money and money just appeared, right? If you don't receive it in that way, then the universe will go, you're not serious. You really don't actually want that because you're not showing that that's what you want. You're saying the words, but you're not putting you're not putting that forward into actually receiving, right? Because you just walked over it. You didn't receive what the universe was providing for you. And so that tends to be what really inhibits us from manifestation, is in between the ears of us not knowing what it is that we can receive.
I always think about Jim Carrey and the way he carried a certain amount of money, like on a check in his wallet, because he's like, this is how much money I'm going to make doing whatever, acting. And it came true. Yeah. Same thing when I wanted to be a reporter. It's like, I want to be on TV. I want to be, telling stories. And eventually I did it. How important do you think in this process about journaling? How important is that?
When we think things and also write them down, we're amplifying the message to the universe. And so I find journaling to be a really important exercise for that self-love, for that curiosity, for gratitude. Gratitude is really one of the best ways to change our vibrations, is to find the situation and find what you're grateful in it. Because, you could be in a car accident and think to yourself, well, how can I be grateful? Trust me, there's ways to be grateful. Maybe you were manifesting a new car, right? And then you have this situation. And so journaling just amplifies what it is that we want. And it really helps to anchor that in too. And so gratitude in journaling your manifestations is really important, I feel, in that spiritual space to achieve what it is, or to receive what it is that you're, seeking.
Is that one of the, would you consider one of the promises that you would make to yourself to live a better life, a joyful life?
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought up promises too, because promises are so important, and we don't pay attention to how many times we've made promises to ourselves that we don't keep. And so that is another way to really access, that spirituality within, is to honor your promises. And so you listen to this and you're like, all right, Tiffany, I'm going to journal every day. Please don't make that promise, right? Start small. Really start with what feels good in your body. I'm going to journal every day of the week. You're not going to notice, but your body's going to start to tense. I'm going to journal one day this week. Great. And under no circumstance do you not journal. Under no circumstance. When you make those promises to yourself, you better be able to keep them, because our subconscious is always listening. And if we don't trust ourselves, then we're not going to see you as trustworthy, because we cannot find it in ourselves. And then again, that goes back to that self-love. It's another cornerstone of building that self-love muscle, that vibration within you.
Awesome. Tiffany, where can people find you, connect with you, maybe even listen to your podcast?
Yeah. So I am on all social media. So Facebook is Tiffany O'Hearn, and then on Instagram and TikTok, where I post a lot of videos, it's Heart in Soul Healing, because I don't think that you can heal if you don't have your heart in your soul. And I can also be found at www.innersoulmap.com, which is where I bring you astrology and empower you to learn your own chart on your own time using AI. And it's a really beautiful experience. I have it for relationships and everything else. So if you really want to come home to yourself, then I highly recommend, checking out that website as well. And then I also have a podcast. It's Alchemy of Abundance. It's all about alchemizing that abundance. As you can see, it's just all spirituality within me and love. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Tiff, thanks so much for spending some time with me. Happy Valentine's Day if I don't talk to you. But continue success. Good luck with everything. God bless you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the audience. I'm so grateful for you all. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have. Thanks so much for watching and for listening. Remember, you can check out my podcast at carlostonight.com, see upcoming guests, and check out past episodes. That's carlostonight.com. We'll see you next time.